Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check.
Phipps was a longtime educator in our county at Lumberton Junior, Lumberton Senior, and he was a county AD director and athletic director at St. Paul's High School. And Mr. Phipps, I spoke to Mr. Jerome just to make sure. Mr. Phipps, what I remember, was the first person that came and said anything to me about middle school soccer. He was a very big proponent of middle school soccer, and I don't know if you got to a game last year, but now that was exciting for those middle school kids. And again, he was the first one I remember several years ago to start talking about that and bringing it to the board so that we could look at it, and it did get approval. So let's have a moment of silence now for Mr. Phipps. Thank you. Let us pray. Our gracious Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for your blessings each and every day. We thank you for the life of Mr. Phipps and how he influenced and led many young people in this county and other counties in their progress through school. We always ask your blessings upon this meeting, that things might be said and done for the glory and the upbuilding of thy kingdom, and the things that we do will be the betterment for all citizens of Robeson County. And we continue to ask that you look upon the public schools of Robeson County, and that we continue to seek your guidance each and every day. These things we ask in thy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Craig. Now we have the adoption of the minutes. Need a motion? I'm sorry, the agenda, the agenda.
Give me some love. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
We have first by Mr. Vice Chair Lawson, second by Mr. Gentry. Motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The agenda's been adopted.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approval of the minutes, open session.
We have a motion by Mr. Lawson, Vice Chair, and a second by Mr. Trey Britt. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Information items. North Carolina State Art Award presentation by Mr. Steve Keller.
Chairman Simmons, Superintendent Williamson, board members, tonight is the first time that you have the pleasure of meeting our new art supervisor, Mr. Stephen Taylor, who has hit the deck running and doing a fantastic job. So this time he will present the North Carolina State Art Award presentation.
Good evening, Board Chairman Simmons, Superintendent Williams, and chair members, board members. I appreciate y'all's time tonight. NC Farm to Schools is a program that provides produce for all of our schools and all across our state. That program provides a contest for the artists in our county every year, and each year they take the best artworks they get from the state and they put them in a calendar. And tonight we are blessed enough to have one of our students from Magnolia School, and I'm going to call them up now to receive an award. So y'all come on up, Principal, everybody. We have Principal Locklear for Magnolia School. We have the teacher, we have Valerie Thomas is here, and also we have our main person, the winner of our contest, and we'll hold up his artwork here. He's on the first page here for August, and you can see his beautiful artwork that he did. We want to present him with this award, Daniel Garcia Flores, for his great work and his representation of the public schools of Robeson County artists.
I just want to say thank you for just giving me the opportunity to be an art teacher for the public schools of Robeson County. I absolutely love my job. I love what I do. And Daniel, thank you for doing such an amazing job in my classroom. You are a pleasure to teach every year. Thank you.
Let me just kind of piggyback on what Ms. Valerie says. This is indeed a pleasure and an honor for the recognition of Magnolia Elementary School. Our students have really, really worked hard. And like she said, Daniel's a great student, and he really, really enjoys art, also to the point to where he utilizes it in his other content areas as well. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the support that you give, the board gives, and the district to Magnolia and to our students. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all very much. Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is PSRC 2021-2022 data review. Dr. Locklear and Cindy Lewis.
Chairman Simmons, Superintendent Williamson will begin with our data review from 21-22. So Ms. Cindy will go over those slides with you, and then I'll close it out with the historical perspective.
Good evening, Chairman Simmons, Dr. Williamson, and board members. To start off with, to give you a little bit of information about our district. We are a low-performing district, and how we classified as a low-performing district. It is based on 80% proficiency and 20% growth. High schools actually have some additional indicators that they add into that calculation. And as you can see on the first graph, you can see the number of our low-performing schools and our schools that either exceeded growth or met a level C grade. And that is a level C grade or exceeded growth. And you can tell on the left-hand side, we were at 40% that met or exceeded, or actually that exceeded or met the C grade. And my recollection is we had one that was a C grade that was not at exceed. On the right-hand side, you see the low-performing schools. We were at 57.1% low-performing, which makes us a low-performing district. The state classifies a low-performing district as any district that has 51% of their schools as low-performing. Next slide. The next graph shows you our growth, which I think says a lot about our district and our kids. As you can see, the smaller part of the graph are our schools that did not meet growth. We had 7 schools that did not meet or exceed. You had 14 schools in our district plus Southside Ashpole that met, and then you had 14 schools that exceeded. The next comparison, you can see where we fall in with the state in EBOS, whether we met or exceeded. And Robeson County is on the right-hand side. We were at above 80%, where the state was at 70%. So we are growing our kids, but we know we need to grow them every year in this capacity. The final 3 slides are your work keys comparison, and you can look at the work keys silver, gold, and platinum. Those are the scores that count toward the high school proficiency or high school growth. And the silver, as you can tell, we were lower. We were higher in 2022 than the silver, which is the 2020. The 2021 was the 20. I'm sorry, the blue was the 2020, 2021, and the silver is the 21, 22. So you'll see that we're lower in many of the areas and many of the schools. This is the gold comparison from 21 to 22. And you will see some of the schools are lower, but we do have some high points at a couple of the high schools. And then you will see the platinum, which is the highest ranking for your ACT. Are there any questions?
I don't know where that hand up from, Dr. Manning. Hit your button.
Am I doing wrong? I didn't see, and tell me if I misread it someplace, that we had some blue ribbon schools. Is that correct or not correct? And that's
Yes, that is correct.
And that's a very high distinction. Do you have that information in any place?
I know Early College and East Robeson.
And that's a high distinction. I don't know how many were in the state. Was it 25 maybe?
I think it was, I don't know that number, five.
Only five.
Five.
Five?
Five in the state, Doc.
5 in the state, and I know it's a high distinction, and maybe we could recognize them sometime, maybe?
Yeah, they fly out to, or up to DC on November the 1st to receive the award, and then we'll recognize them at the next board meeting.
Okay. I guess maybe the historical perspective after Dr. Robert finishes, my question is, and maybe the superintendent wants to answer it, after we look at this data, so what? I mean, what are we going to do about it? And he's doing something about it, but I just want to hear it again.
He is. And they're working every day, every day. And you asked the question earlier about last year's comparison to this year. It's a hard comparison to make because we had more schools when we were calculating those averages because they were brought in from 18-19. So it's a hard comparison to make. 22 out of 39 schools as compared to now 20 out of 35. I think that's what you asked me earlier.
Mr. Curry?
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. My question, and part of it's a comment, it's one of my pet peeves with testing. It's 80% proficient and 20% growth, right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Which, that's the state guidelines. We can't change it. That's just what it is. But it's constantly, it's being talked about at State Board of Education meeting, I think about a month ago. State superintendent and basically all those in attendance that's on the state board discussed this formula needed to be changed. And it's been discussed, folks, for years. And, you know, we had growth. But the way this formula is, to me, it just penalizes for a lot of different things, and it always has. And I just wanted to make the comment, even though we are classified as low performing, we know we got people working hard each and every day. We know things are being put in place to improve the test scores, and you know, there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to see those results at the end of the year, because if you pop in and out of a classroom, teachers are teaching, and they're teaching every day, every minute that they can teach. And you know, I think they're doing a good job, and we're doing training. I know sometimes it might seem like it's too much training, and but we just ask that we look and see what will happen, you know, at the end of the year. And hopefully one day the state will change this formula as far as how they look at this stuff, because you can have growth, as you pointed out, Ms. Lewis. We had growth.
Yes, sir.
But all people see is you got this many schools are low performing based on the way this formula is. So I just ask, you know, people keep working hard and, you know, doing what you're doing, and I thank you for what you do each and every day.
I will tell you that there is a survey out there from DPI that we're asking everyone to complete. We have sent it out in an email. We've also put it out on Facebook. State has too, in reference to growth and performance and how that calculation affects and what probably we could use in the future instead of what we're using right now. So there is a movement, and that movement should move forward. I think they were talking in January where they would have some more conversations on that. I will tell you, we did the data, and at 80-20, we are low performing. At 70-30, we are low performing. And at 60-40, we would be low performing. But if you go 50-50, we come out of that low performing category with 40% of our schools being low performing.
And Mr. John, if I may add, that's one of the reasons as far as the 50-50 was brought up. And let me mention that survey too. Folks, it takes about 15 minutes. And you can put in there, you know, how you would like it looked at. So we can make sure it does get out. It takes you about 10 or 15 minutes to fill that survey out. And they are trying to get the data for that.
Any other questions? Mr. Gentry?
I need a refresher. What is the definition of low performing?
It's this district, low performing district, it is anything or any district that has 51% of their schools low performing. Simple majority. And we are at 57.1.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Locklear and Ms. Cindy Lewis.
And we're going to look at the historical perspective next, Chairman. So based on what Ms. Lewis shared with you and looking at the test results, the longitudinal data shows there are continuously, with the reading and the math, there are continuous gaps. So therefore, business as usual is not working, and we need to do a better job of supporting our students in the building to make sure that they have that solid literacy foundation if they're going to be proficient and be successful in the content standards. So the first question is, why change? Okay? So next slide, please. So reason for change one is the grade level standards. We know that the curriculum resources we were using, or some of the resources we were using, were not aligned to the grade level standards. So we looked at the curriculum materials and the implementation findings. While PSR students are consistently engaged in the content and the tasks of the lesson, most tasks are unaligned and demands of grade level standards. As PSRC teachers use a wide range of materials with their instruction, students have been inconsistent and inequitably access to grade level standards. And of course, PSRC teachers report inconsistent experiences with curriculum guidance and support, leading teachers to spend a significant proportion of their planning time gathering and creating to make sure that they have the materials to prepare the lessons. Next slide, please. So in 2018, the New Teacher Project done some research, and the report was published about the quality of students' academic experiences in school and its effects on long-term success. So the research found that there were 4 key resources that influence the student's school experience and outcomes. First is grade-appropriate assignments, content that reflects college and career-ready academic standards. 2, strong instruction, teaching that asks students to do the intellectual heavy lifting. Number 3, deep engagement, lessons that students find interesting, enjoyable, and worth deep concentration. And then finally, teachers with high expectations, adults who believe students can meet the demands of rigorous standards. Next slide. Reason for change number 2, the research on the science of reading. And you heard that earlier. I mentioned about the training that our teachers are going through pre-K-5 as it relates to helping our teachers to teach the 5 components of reading. And we know that the human brain is not naturally wired to read. Reading is a complex set of skills that must be explicitly taught. Reading requires a complex set of mental processes, and that talks about the decoding, the reading comprehension, and the language comprehension. Foundational reading skills must be taught explicitly and systematically. Explicit means predetermined skills are taught directly, and systematic skills are taught in a logical progression. And finally, the foundational reading skills can't stand alone. Students also need background knowledge and vocabulary to be skilled readers. So the question, why the change? L-Education, which is our English Language Arts program for K-8, it builds knowledge through engaging, complex text centered around a module topic. It teaches writing using the read, think, talk, write framework. Writing is incorporated in each lesson and connected to the topic and text, which builds background knowledge and vocabulary. Grammar is embedded into the module lessons to support students' development as writers. And reading foundational standards are aligned with the lessons. So why the change for math in K-7? Eureka Square Math. Rigor to support the productive struggle, coherence across the grade levels, digital interactives, increased opportunities for students' discourse, and you've heard that with the turning talk, elbow partners, etc. Lessons and modules are intentionally organized to leverage connections between concepts and progress, conception understanding from simple to complex to help students access new learning and problem solving. Those are just a few responses to why the change. But Mr. Craig made a very valid point. If you visit the classrooms, teachers are making progress. Teachers are learning the new curriculum. Teachers are working hard. We had a meeting this morning with our principals. Principals are working hard, making sure that, with the academic monitoring, they're in the classrooms to observe and get feedback. But we know that this is not going to happen overnight. It takes time. And those of you that taught, you remember your teaching days, when you got a new curriculum, it takes a little while before you feel comfortable teaching that curriculum. So I want to say that our teachers are doing a phenomenal job. They're working on the annotation. We see much improvements from school to school, and we're just so proud of them. And we'll take any questions at this time or comments.
Mr. Gentry.
Will the new app alleviate some of the intense planning that teachers had to do in order, gathering material? And remember
Yes.
that was addressed at a former
Yes.
meeting.
Yes.
And is that already
Yeah.
in progress at this time?
Yeah, because all the materials, Mr. Gentry, are there for the teachers. And we spent, I don't know how many days packing materials to make sure everybody has what they need. When teachers realize they may be missing something, all they do is notify the academic coach, the principal, so that we can get those materials. And we've made several trips back and forth to the warehouse to make sure teachers have everything they need to teach that lesson.
Follow-up question. So has this been happening long enough for teachers to give some feedback either way as to how this is affecting their implementation of instruction?
We have conversations. We're constantly in the schools. We had a visit last week with our relay partner, Ms. Janine. So we had some very candid conversations at Littlefield and some of our other schools. And teachers are feeling more comfortable. They're not 100% are there yet, but they are making progress.
Mr. Terry.
I understand the value in utilizing the script approach. I can understand the value in using a script in terms of developing a common language among teachers, grade levels, and even for students when they progress from this year to the next. But I'm wondering from my other board members, what sort of feedback are you hearing, particularly from veteran students or from veteran teachers? Is anybody hearing any particular feedback related to utilizing the script?
Dr. Emmanuel.
I have to be honest with you, yes, and it varies. I think one thing I got today is the frustration of two teachers in that they're not having time to, because of the timing, they're not being able to make sure that the children understand or able to learn and apply and use what they're learning. They're having to move on. They feel that they have to move on. Sure, at the end, at some point down the line, they can come back and review, but then they got to reteach all that back to the children. Now, this is two teachers' assessment, and I'm sure, you know, some information I received today, that there are frustrated people. Now, on the other side, there are a couple of people, and it's new teachers who are very uncomfortable with planning. They're excited about not having to worry about finding resources, planning. But what I found, the teachers with more experience, they're more frustrated with being restricted with this. Now, this is my perception. Somebody else might get another perception. But when anytime you have anything new, it's a challenge to people, and you'll get mixed reviews on it. But I think the thing that I'm saying to us, that we have to be patient with teachers, and we have to have people, everybody going in, not have a different agenda to monitor them. Everyone should go in with teachers to help teachers, to make them more comfortable. And again, next year when we do the planning, I think for staff development, we should have a staff development committee and do a survey on staff development and look at our needs, what we need. But we need to be real conscious of planning this staff development again another year. I know some must go with the curriculum, but we need to be very conscious. That's something I'm getting complaints about, is even though it's optional, whenever you do it, is the overwhelming staff development for teachers. That's something that I don't know how we can get out of it this year. I'm not saying we need to, but I'm saying another year we need to be really conscious of doing a survey on staff development of what we need to do. And I'm not sure if principals are adding additional things at their schools for teachers to do in staff development. I just don't know. Thank you.
Mr. Henry?
Mr. Chair, I echo the same as Dr.
Microphone,
Emanuel.
Dr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
I echo the same information Dr. Emanuel shared. And along with that, I'd like to add that some parents have confronted me that have educational degrees and they want to help their students, but they don't understand, and they want to know if there's something that they can obtain as a parent level to maybe help them teach the curriculum in the same aspect that we're teaching our teachers to teach the curriculum. The new teachers are like Dr. Emanuel said, new teachers are finding it to be interesting and liking it. Seasonal teachers, it's always had their way of teaching, and it worked for them. It's a little bit overwhelming, and I think that they're concerned about the pace we're taking.
Williams?
You know, board members, our intent is, because we can't finish this conversation tonight, is that we schedule a curriculum meeting and we would walk through all the concerns, all the questions. I will say that we are supporting teachers 100%. We do understand that it's new, it's different. We moved to a formative way of teaching, so that feedback, we're moving away from mastery because we never covered the curriculum, so that exposure. We are asking teachers to spiral back to make sure that part of that design work. But my hope is that in the curriculum meeting, we'll cover all this information in terms of the PD, what we're trying to do, if we can address it at that time.
Mr. Craig?
Just, Mr. Dr. Robert, if you could, one of y'all mentioned it about the, I think the relay teams that are going into teachers' classrooms now, and I think it's like 10 or 12 people. And just if you could make a comment, because I know there's some schools they haven't been to, and as a teacher, if you were in there, and especially I'm going to say the first, second year teacher, or even a 25-year veteran, and you got 12 people coming in your room to observe today, what are they here looking for? And if you can just reiterate that, they're there to help, and we're getting information that can be shared at all schools. And it's not a gotcha thing or anything like that, but just share why they are there and what they're doing.
Yeah, and that just gives us a clear understanding of where we need to add that additional support. So, for example, one of the classes we visited last week, the teacher was really struggling with the actual lesson because if the teacher is reading everything verbatim, that means that the teacher hasn't really internalized that lesson and really practiced how they're going to teach the students, whether it's the teacher doing his or her part, students doing their part. So that's one I remember last week, but we had several with Eureka, with Relay, even with L. And Dr. Carr and I made the schedule last night for the upcoming month. And we're making sure that we visit every single school, so every school is getting the same support when it comes to our partners at L Education, with Eureka Square, and with Relay. And that just gives us a clear understanding of where we need to provide additional support. What can we do to help our supervisors if they need additional training with our academic coaches? We are a support team. We are there to help teachers and administrators in any capacity that we possibly can.
And Ms. Kirk, if I can address that, at this point, last year we had a conversation about principals becoming instructional leaders, that they've got to drive that part of that work in the building. And so those teams that's going in and monitoring now, we're not really focusing on the teachers. We're working with principals to help them understand how to monitor, how to really know if we're teaching the standards. So that's what we're really working with and focusing now. So I understand teachers are concerned when group of folks, but we're working with principals and teams on how do we monitor to make sure that those standards are being taught. Dr. Carr, you might want to address that a little bit more.
So good evening, Chairman Simmons, Dr. Williamson, board members. So as we looked and we working with Relay, what you'll see is, yes, our teams are going out, but we're using that data to really drive how do we support the principals to better support the teachers. So one of the things that you've brought up just today is the struggle with the lessons. And so what we did is actually pulled the principals in and talked about how do you help support your teachers to dig into those lessons. So as a principal, you have to know that first in order to help support a teacher. And so what we literally did is walk them through their own practice clinic that they can then take back to their school and help their teachers to slowly process that curriculum. Because it's going to take time to use those strategies and it's going to take time to process all that. So we need to know what's going on across the district so we can provide that additional layer of support to the principals as they are supporting our teachers in those schools.
Any other questions? Mr. Gentry?
What adjustments, if any, are being made to the state mandated testing process and the individual tests themselves, and also exploring other methods of evaluation besides choosing A, B, C, D?
So you're referencing what other types of questions, possibilities
Yes,
that they have, other types of assessments. Test type or the test items that they have, they're having mix and match, which they pull and drag and drop, if you would like to call. So they do have alternate types of questions out there that they are implementing more so now than ever. We are still online, and I will tell you that it has gotten to the point that our paper pencil test for our kids that actually have to have a paper pencil test have now become interchangeable and interactive too, to the point that we have to order tests with magnets or Velcro. So they are implementing different types of test items in the test. In reference to other types of tests, CTE, I believe, is moving to more of a performance base. May I?
May I add to that? So both those curriculum, the L and the Eureka, they are applied curriculum. So we're using a formative method that feedback is based on kids doing the work in real time with that feedback to them. And we know that that's it, because that directs us what we need to aspire back to make sure that we are covering those standards. But to answer your question, it's an formative format, a formative classroom, real-time, instant feedback.
Any other questions?
May I, Chairman Simmons, may I?
Yes, sir.
We passed out 3 notebooks before you all started, and I just want to make sure that you all have those and make sure you understand kind of what they are. One of them is accountability data report, and that provides you with graphs of our data for public schools of Robeson County by grade level, by subject. You have a district benchmark comparison from 16-17 up to 21-22. That compares all of the districts in our region. And if you look at that chart, you'll notice that there are some of those schools that are in red. All of those schools in this area are low performing. And you'll notice that Public Schools of Robeson County is highlighted in blue and red ink. The last is the school comparison report, and that is each grade level, subject area, and other area of accountability that we compared from 16 and 17 to 21, 22. So those are the items that you have tonight. And we will be discussing those during the curriculum meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is policy 6560, disposal of surplus property. It was brought to my attention, and I related to Dr. Williamson about a board member get some surplus stuff that we haven't brought to the board. I'll let Dr. Williamson explain what he did in his investigation and what he found.
Once Chairman Simmons shared with me that concern, and then I did reach out, and indeed there was no question that happened, that we did not follow policy. We asked that individual to return that. That has happened, and again, when we do a board work session at some point, we review this policy. But the concern was did not follow policy, and we had not yet declared that equipment surplus.
Mr. Henry?
Mr. Chair, those items were intentionally going to be used to cut grass at a school, 2 schools. It was having difficulty without custodians during summer months. I think it was a misunderstanding. It was not surplused. It was school equipment. Planning on being accessed to be used.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Gentry?
I'm thinking that there might be, it might be in order to explore our existing policies regarding this issue and other related issues. At a quick glance, my opinion is that the existing policies may not be sufficient to cover any and all situations, or even in the majority of situations. So as policy chair, I would recommend that the policy committee convene to explore not only this issue, but quite frankly, the more I peruse our existing policies, the more that I see that it is in order that the policy committee undertake a review, a systematic review of our policies. And I'm not making that as a motion, but I am suggesting that be under consideration.
Any other questions?
Mayor,
Yes.
just as a reminder, all of you are aware that our policies are written by the North Carolina School Board Association, and that once they issue new policies based on change in policies and laws at the state level, that we do convene the policy committee and review those policies based on the ones by North Carolina School Board Association. So.
Mr. Gentry?
Clarification. Yeah, I'm piggybacking on what the superintendent just said. Are we, as a board, at liberty to go back and of our own volition and explore and review policies? And I'm sure there's a procedure where we then suggest, as we have in the past, for additions, omissions, deletions, whatever the case may be. So, in following up with what I just said, would we as a board, and again, we'd have to set the agenda and the calendar when to do that, but are we at liberty to undertake our own review and then suggest revisions to the School Board Association?
Yes.
Okay.
Always. At the end of the day, the policies of the public schools of Robeson County School Board, so yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, recommendations on anything? Okay, we're down to the public comments. We're gonna have first one is gonna be Mr. Jerome Hunt, our county AD.
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Williamson, Chairman Simmons, board members. I'm here tonight on behalf of the public schools of Robeson County, and a procedure, a rule that was put in place back on February the 14th for our school system and our students getting in fights or being disciplined at athletic events. If you'll look there on your table, you'll see where email was sent out to all the athletic directors, all the principals back on February 11th. We put a rule in place back then. Dr. Weebson called me and asked, we had a fight at Lumberton High School at a basketball game, which involved some athletes from another school. And we wanted to put a rule in place to try to help curtail some of this. And the reason we want to do this weren't the first fight that we had last year. We had several fights at athletic events. It was almost every week I was coming in and telling Dr. Williamson, hey, we had this happen last night, or we had that happen last night. So this was something that we decided to put in place. So we decided to get the high school athletic directors together to come up with a rule for the district. And so our 5 high school athletic directors got together with myself and came up with this rule. And if you'll look on the paper there in front of you, the email that was sent out, so the rule says any student disciplined for fighting at an athletic event shall be banned from attending any athletic event for the remainder of that sports season in which the fight occurred. Students may return to athletic events at the conclusion of that particular season. This is for fights outside of game competitions. The NCHSA and DPI have rules in place for fights that occur during competitions. I also go on to say, please make sure all of your coaches and players are aware of this. And if you look, we've had this incident at St. Paul's Middle with an athlete that got in a fight at St. Paul's High School back on August 26th, first football game, home football game for St. Paul's High School. And this rule was enforced. And once the rule was enforced, the community's up in arms, they want to support the student, that's fine. But the rule is being enforced. And so what's coming back to us now is, well, we didn't know about the rule. The coaches didn't know about the rule, the AD didn't know about the rule, the principal didn't know about the rule. They knew about the rule. You see here where the email was sent to the ADs, sent to the principals. The high school athletic directors meeting was on February the 10th, which is when we came up with this rule. On February 11th, I met with the middle school athletic directors. You can also see there the agenda for the middle school AD meeting. You can see down at the bottom where it talks about that rule. You can see my little notes that I scribbled on my agenda that day. And you can also see the sign-in sheet where the athletic director from St. Paul's Middle was at the meeting.
That's your time, Mr. Okay, the first one is Mr. Trayshawn Murphy. The next one is Brandon Travis Pittman. Next one is Nicole Godfrey. You have 3 minutes, Ms. Godfrey.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name's Nicole Goforth.
Go for it, I'm sorry.
Yes. I don't know Malachi Locklear personally. I've heard a lot of good things about him. This is in reference to the incident, the fight that happened with the 8th grade football player who this rule has been enforced to where he cannot attend any athletic games. I'm here to support him. I feel he should be allowed to play. For my knowledge, there have been middle school students as well as high school students who have been in fights and altercations at athletic events that this rule was not enforced on. I don't feel that it's fair that it's pick and choose. We enforce it on this child, but not this one. So I'm here to support him. I feel he should be allowed to play. And maybe from this point on, if that's when y'all want to enforce this rule, that would be fair. But I feel it should go for every student, every athlete who gets in trouble. I'm sorry, it's not fair that you apply this rule to one student and not another, or one athlete and not another. Also, who's to say that the young man who got in the fight with Malachi wasn't aware of this rule? Maybe he heard it from somebody through the grapevine, and he said, oh, I don't like Malachi, so I'm going to just wait until I've been bothering him. He's told nothing's been done, and I'm going to wait till the school event, and that way he can't play football the rest of the year. I'm also here for several other reasons. I have 2 children. One was in the high school at St. Paul's. One's currently in the middle school at St. Paul's. My high school son had a rough year last year with bullying and standing up for himself and getting in trouble for it. This year, he was suspended on the 2nd day of school, if I'm not mistaken, with an issue with the new assistant principal, Mr. Brewington. It was after school day. 20, 50 children were walking through a field, heading to their parents' vehicles. Mr. Brewington's yelling at all the kids and to get closer to the road, so my son follows the crowd. And for some reason, he picks my son out of the crowd of 20, 50 students. And my son never said a word to him. My husband was there watching. He was sitting in his vehicle. He was listening. Son never said a word to him, gave him a thumbs up. Mr. Brewington said, that's okay, I'll get you tomorrow. Next day, he goes to my son's class, pulls him out. Son tells the teacher, I'll be back.
Ms. Godfrey, That's your time, Ms. Nicole. I
All right.
apologize for messing your name up here.
No worries, thank you.
Next is Mr. Brandon Norris.
Say Brandon Norton.
Norton, I'm sorry, Norton.
Yeah, excuse my attire, just got up, had to hurry up and get off work. And my words, because I just wrote it on the text, so excuse me, I'll be reading. I'm Brandon Norton, I'm a parent at St. Paul's Middle School, and I'm a bulldog in that area. I'm here on behalf of Malachi Locklear. He is a role model and mentor on and off the field. He does not deserve the punishment that has been bestowed upon him. My boys, I brought my two sons back here. They look up to him as a role model and a friend. Trouble has never been in his portfolio, and he gets in one incident before school starts and before St. Paul's Middle School had a football roster. We didn't even have a team nor a schedule. I've spoke with my boys, and they are the same as Malachi. They don't get in trouble because they know what would happen at home. But if someone is to bother them or bully them or want to cause the harm to them, they also know what level to take it, and they have been taught properly in doing so. They never heard, nor I as a parent have heard of any rule nor procedure that keeps a kid that has had an incident to give them the max punishment such as this. To some kids, football is life, and some sports is life. How can you tell me that we are going to max punish a kid who never has caused harm to keep their heads up and to do good and follow their dreams, when in this case, which may seem small to most but means so much to this kid, is to play ball? The kid that constantly gets in trouble smoking, skipping school, trying to cause conflict on positive kids that we got can keep getting suspended over and over, but are still allowed into our schools over and over, just doing the same thing. The kid has suffered enough. All I'm asking for the bottom is to overturn the idea of Malachi Locklear not playing football, because as a parent and a friend, no positive kid deserves this kind of punishment. And I also feel this is a high school rule that has been put in place. He stated it, ESC, I'm not sure the exact words, but it's a high school rule. This is a middle school incident that just happened at a high school game. Do I think, I know the kid personally, I invited him to my home. I raise my kids the best that I can. They don't get in trouble. That's all I can do, is to raise them the best I can, is to keep their heads up, to follow their dreams, that anything is possible. You can go as far as you want to. You make your...
That's your time, Mr. Brandon.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Next, Miss Angela Baxley. Miss Angela Baxley. Mr. Adam Lowry.
Good evening. I'm Mr. Adam Lowry from St. Paul's Middle School. I've coached football and I've taught PE and helped for around the last 10 years. I've lived in St. Paul's my entire life. I'm supported St. Paul's. Dream job was to be at St. Paul's Middle School, not the high school, not the elementary school, but at the middle school, to make a difference in kids' lives between the ages of 12 and 15. I think that's a very important time when they start to make decisions that can affect them a lifetime, and that's what I wanted to be a part of. The rule that I think is in place, do I agree with some of the aspects of it? Yes, I do. I think discipline should be a part of every athletic program, every school, and I stand for what I believe. But what I believe in also is that this rule was not clearly given to us as football coaches, and it is very hard at the middle school level for me to get in touch with kids over the summer, have a meeting. We haven't even started practice. We hadn't even have a football meeting. We had to have nothing concerning football to get this rule. I knew nothing about this rule. Last year, my athletic director, Roy Baker, had retired during Christmas break. My brother, Trey Lowry, was hired in his place. He was at the high school, the incident had occurred. The kid that was in the incident at Lumberton High School was allowed to go back and play to finish the basketball season, and one was allowed to try out for the baseball season. So no more, that rule never crossed the mind of it was enforced or it was brung upon. It may have been discussed, and that was it. That's all he said, it was discussed. I think when a rule is put in place to the severity that a kid can lose a whole football season, I think more than the high school athletic directors of Robeson County should make a decision on that rule. I think the Board of Education, I think there should be a whole lot more people involved in making a rule where a kid that was standing up for himself against a bully that has numerous occasions been taken out of school for picking on other kids, picking fights, and being suspended in his own record at his schools at Parkton. Now that he's at St. Paul's High School, he's in alternative school. Malachi has never been in trouble one day in the 3 years that he's been at St. Paul's Middle School. I didn't say not one write-up. He's never been in trouble one time. Never. And he stands up for himself. One Friday night, in front of his peers, his daddy was at the ball game with him. And now he's being punished for standing up to a bully. And I think that's wrong. I think that we should make a difference. And that's not sending the right message to our kids. I think when we stand up for ourselves, you should be rewarded and not punished. And this kid here is being punished. This kid is being punished for all. Thank you, sir.
Next is Mr. Dale Godfrey.
I'm going to defer or just pass in general. I'll let everyone speak. I'm representing Mr. Malachi at this moment, so if I can go last or.
You have to go now.
Okay, I'll skip. I'll defer.
Mr. Jonathan Stedman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonathan Stedman. My son goes to St. Paul's Middle School. He made the baseball team last year as a sixth grader, and Malachi was one of the older kids. He was a mentor to those sixth graders. He never once put them down. He was always picking them up, and he just don't deserve this punishment that's being bestowed upon him. I understand, the need for rules and everything. I mean, I get that. It's not about that. But the thing is nobody was aware of it. This is something that should be the board should come up with this rule. They should be made known of it, and everything. Called Mr. Jerome Hunt, and first it was a policy, then it got changed to a procedure. We asked for a policy. I don't know. What it is. And this happened before school even started. How are we supposed to let athletes know that they can't get in a fight? School hadn't even started. Football tryouts hadn't even started. We were still on summer break. But like I said, I can stand here all day and go on about, Malachi's character. I've had the pleasure of help coaching him in the past. And like I said, his character is, I wish all kids were like him as far as athletes. He was allowed to practice and everything before they come over to the middle school and said, oh, he's not eligible to play. Even the principal, he's supposed to get 10 days suspension, but since he's never been in trouble in the past, we're going to give him 3 days. He served his 3 days suspension. The St. Paul's Middle School administration, they were never made aware of it until another person from another school come over and, made them aware of it. Like I said, I just believe this rule is singling out athletes. You got other kids that can get in trouble and, they get suspended and all that, but it's singling out athletes. And who's to say, And so in this county, I mean, athletics is, that might be all the kids have, and you're punishing them for it. You know, he was standing up for himself. You know, they said they viewed the video, but they didn't view the events leading up to the incident where the kid was constantly bullying Malachi, throwing bottles at him and stuff like that. They didn't see Malachi try to walk away and get away from the kid. And he stood up for himself. Just like I tell my son, stand up for yourself. I mean, anybody would. I just think the rule is unfair. You're punishing a good kid.
That's your time, Mr. Jonathan.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, now the action items. Can't comment on public comments. Action item, I'm sorry. North Carolina Violent Youth Prevention Center. We have it in front of us. All it is a grant they're applying for. I think it's $2 or $3 million. We have some of them, the employees already in our school. This sends just a letter of support, and they wanted me to sign off on it, and before I could do it, it had to be brought before the whole board and approved in order for me to do it. If you see on the back, it's got several people here in our community, the judges, police chiefs, mayors, and all them, and I hate for us to be the only one that don't sign it. Any questions? Mr. Randy?
Mr. Grady, we need to make a motion.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the North Carolina Youth Violence Prevention Center's community letter of support from the Robeson County Board of Education.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Vice Chair Lawson, second by Mr. Gentry. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passed. Next is the recommendation for legal service contract by Dr. Williamson.
Mr. Chairman and board members, on last month, we did hear presentations from 3 law firms who presented information to provide legal services for the public schools of Robeson County. The following month, we did have conversation with cabinet and with board members. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend to you and the board members that our recommendation would be the law firm of Richard Schwartz to provide legal services with a 1-year contract.
Any questions? Mr. Gentry?
I was impressed with Mr. Schwartz. However, I was concerned about the number of endeavors that he is involved in, and he outlined a number of those specifically. Can you address that at all?
He is involved in a lot, but he has a history of performance. He's a powerful researcher. Most superintendents across the state have worked with him. That has never been an issue. When I've used him in the past, he's always gotten information back in a timely, so that's never, as far as I know, been an issue.
I was impressed with his knowledge.
Thank you.
Hit your button. Hit your button again, I'm sorry. Mr. Locklear?
I was impressed with the firms as well. Mr. Grady has done a wonderful job in his time with us, and I appreciate you more now than I did before this process, for sure. Because, you know, looking at some of these numbers that we're dealing with, it's an interesting conversation because we've been so accustomed to you, Mr. Grady, and not to downplay anything that Mr. Grady's done for us in the past. He's done a wonderful job, and like I say, that number of years. Is there anybody on the board that's been here for 28 years? You know, that's been involved with the system or with the board that long. I think we may have maybe Mr. Mike or somebody else, but if we think about a board attorney, the first line of the ad that went out said, "The Public Schools of Robeson County is seeking an attorney or firm to serve in the capacity of a board attorney, of a school board attorney." It didn't say superintendent attorney, it said board attorney, and I think there's a fundamental difference. We're just conceptualizing what a board attorney should be. And during my own research, we discussed extensively how important EC is, and EC in particular in Robeson County, and I don't want to downplay that. EC is certainly important. But if you think about educational law, there were some firms that were large and had all these different, attorneys in these specialty areas, but educational law is huge, and just like the superintendent just said, the attorney is going to be conducting, not only representing us in cases in terms of being reactive to situations. We're going to have to be, I feel like, more proactive about how we conceptualize an attorney for the school system. If it was left up to me, if we're thinking about the amount of money that we're having to spend, I would like for us to consider having a full-time attorney, because with the amount of money that we're looking at spending, even if this individual is not laser focused in a certain area of educational law or 2 or 3 areas, just like the superintendent said, it's the firm or the person is going to have a high acumen for conducting research. So I would like for us to really think about all of the areas in which we could be impacted in terms of being proactive. If we have somebody here full-time evaluating all of our processes, because just like Mr. Genscher said earlier, there's not everything is tied directly to a particular policy. There's, in some cases, a gap between the policy and the procedure when it hits the ground. And I think, in my opinion, that's where a full-time person could come in and really get ahead of some of these issues rather than just responding. And like I said earlier, EC is important, but I've been here since 2020, and we've had one, this board's had, in my mind, based on what I've been a part of, it's been one conversation in terms of a federal inquiry, and it was dealing with Office of Civil Rights. So it was an OCR issue, not necessarily an EC issue. So law can go this broad. That's just my 2 cents. I think we should consider having a full-time attorney and a paralegal. Just for your references, Cumberland County has a full-time attorney and two paralegals. So I don't think we are less complicated than Cumberland. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Lawson, Vice Chair.
We had discussed it and listened to it, but my thing is about the money. And the money goes from one extreme to the other extreme of how far it could go. Ms. Erica, am I right on this? And you can't, and I'm gonna say this, and Mr. Grady's in here, you can't go on what Mr. Grady's making because inflation's went up about 12%, so you might as well figure that in. But my thing is, as a board, we haven't discussed it. And we're all sitting here, and my thing is, I'm like Terry, in what I read, it said a board attorney. And I understand everybody else falls up under that. But whoever does take that place has got some shoes to fill, Mr. Grady. And my thing is right now is that with the money that you're looking at, because he said he could, but I need to see it in writing before I put my name on it. I would like to. I don't know how much he's charging per trip. I don't know how much he's charging per meeting. If a board member calls him, like we have had the opportunity to do with Mr. Grady, that if we needed to know something, we could call him. what these charges are gonna be. I need something broke down so I can see monies. Now, Miss Erica did state that we, also have to pay, the DPI, the school board fund, am I right? What is,
Well, yes, sir. We have been, as long as Mr. Grady's here as well, we have been ongoing paying the school board trust updates our policy manual. And there's an annual fee for that, for them to actually go through the process of us updating, as well as a web hosting because of the policies being kept on our site. So they make sure it's updated there as well. And it's just a shade under $7,000 that we pay them annually for the updates, and then it's like $29.50 for the web hosting that we pay. And we will continue to pay that regardless of a decision on the attorney.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, to both points. One, the attorney represents the interests of the school board, not the superintendent, so that's been made clear. Understand that. And two, what we're asking tonight is to be able to enter into negotiation with the approved name that we can bring you a contract next month for your approval. So that's what we're asking tonight. So you have all the dollar amount of what we're talking about.
Mr. Gentry.
The night that Mr. Schwartz was here, and of course with the other attorneys, he had two staff attorneys with him, but I didn't hear any clear definition or presentation about exactly what their roles would be. Do you have any clarification on that?
They're his researchers in terms of whatever issues he's dealing with for the board and the public schools of Robeson County.
Anyone else? Mr. Craig?
Let me go back, clarify, Dr. Williamson, if we gave approval tonight for you to contact the firm that the central office was recommending, there would be a contact made and it would be brought back to us specifically what they would charge for everything that could be listed as far as phone calls, because Mr. Randy, I pick up the phone and call sometimes. Phone calls, mileage. We talked about, in his case, him being the person that came here to our meetings. So all of that could be worked out. I think, did you say a one-year contract?
Yes.
Okay. All that would be brought back to us, and then if that was not agreeable, we would move on. If it was, we would be there. Okay? So with that said, I'm going to make a motion that we do allow the superintendent and designee to go forward with contacting the Schwartz Law Firm and get all this information back to us for us to make an informed decision so we know exactly where we would be standing with this group.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Terry?
I would agree with that, maybe, Mr. Craig, if there was if we're just thinking about it in terms of budget, the proposal that I'm putting up with a full-time attorney and and maybe a paralegal, we would know what it was going to cost on an annual basis, period. And you could plan for it, and I think Ms. Erica will be happy about everything being in black and white. From my perspective and where I am on the attorneys that we were, on the recommendation, I could probably go along with it if there was a maximum, if there's maybe a cap on that. I would be more inclined to consider that because, based on my understanding, this is going to come out of local funds, and you're not going to have a lot of flexibility if the bill's X% more than you intended. So what is our, Ms. Erica, what is our threshold in terms of percentages with our local funds?
Well, there's not a certain threshold percentage. We
Or,
have,
or I would say, let me rephrase that. Each year annually, what percentage of our local funds do we spend?
for legal fees,
Just a percentage overall of our local funds, would you say that we spend 90% of it?
yes,
75%?
I'd say we're close to around 90 is a good projection. But we have a fund balance of a little over $3 million. So if the need arises for us, which we know, of course, as everybody's indicated, Mr. Grady's been very gracious, and his billing is more simplistic than what the norm is now. So we anticipate, along with the FEMA lawsuit, that we would have an increase in attorney fees for this school year.
Henry?
Mr. Chair, I second Mr. Craig's motion to give Dr. Williamson the right to go ahead and get some information, get it back to us in the next board meeting, so we can move forward.
Go ahead, Dr. May.
I'm confused. Are we voting to hire this gentleman? What are we voting for? Mr. Craig's motion, maybe clarify it, please.
Mr. Craig?
My motion was to give Dr. Williams the authority to discuss with this law firm, not from the standpoint of hiring, but discuss and get what all fees would be for all areas for him, the firm, to represent us, and bring that information back with prices at our next board meeting. And at that time, we would have to vote to accept or not accept this particular firm.
That's correct.
Anyone else? Any other questions? I'm sorry. Hit your mic. Mr. Leach?
So we're just gonna be in contract negotiation with just that one firm, not all of them, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, that's all I just wanna acknowledge, so, okay.
Mr. Gentry?
Will Mr. Swartz himself be attending the board meetings?
That is our intent, and he shared that he would, obviously, not going to always be available, but the majority of the meetings, and we can spell all that out in the contract.
Any other questions? Mr. Leach?
I also think the board or something need to be in on some of these discussions about what are our demands. Like I said, what percent do we want them at the board meetings, and that's very important. I mean, everybody's seen the other two people that he had with him, you know, that look mighty young, and I don't know how experienced they are. I'm just throwing that out there.
Any other questions? Mr. Terry? Mr. Terry?
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that, based on what I saw, the individual was late to do the presentation, and I know that things happen. And I'm sympathetic. But has anybody ever, if anybody in the room, feel free to raise your hand if you've showed up late for a job interview and ended up with the job. So I just want to throw that out there as well. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Craig made a motion to enter into a contract with the attorney Dr. Williamson had recommended, second by Mr. Craig.
Not that we would be entering a contract, but just that he would, Dr. Williamson would be getting information to bring back to us. So then if we didn't agree with the way it's presented and what he would or would not do, we could move on. But it's to get, so I think I, heard was some specific amounts, what will he charge for this, what will he charge for that? And so let him come back and tell us, this is what the charge, this is what the fee will be, this is how much I'll commit, I will be there, and we go from that. And then if we don't like what is presented, we move on to someone else, either while it's here, or we're going to end up having to reopen the application process back up. But it's just to get information.
Okay, the recommendation, what Mr. Craig just said, you seconded it. Mr. Henry seconded it. All in favor, by saying aye? Aye. All opposed? No.
Call for a count, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lawson, call for a count. All in favor by raising your hand? For it. All in favor, all opposed by raising your hand? 5, 6. The motion did not pass. Go ahead. Go ahead. Hit the button.
With all due respect to all of you, I intended tonight to be my last.
Hit your point.
So I would implore you to make a decision on someone. I mean, I gave you my resignation back in May to give you plenty of time to do what you needed to do. I respect all of you. I've been a good trooper, but my intent was to tell you goodbye tonight. And I'm not gonna leave you in a lynch. All of you know me better than that. I'm gonna stay, but just, and you're not gonna get, and Richard said it, what I've done over the years, yeah, I've got to keep the bills paid just like everybody else. But part of this for me was giving back to the community too. And you can't, I'm from here. When I started representing the board, my oldest child wasn't even in school. 2 of my children have graduated. My second child's almost finished with her master's degree, and my youngest child's a senior in college. So it's been a good ride for Grady. 28 years and 3 months, and I am the oldest rat in the barn. Nobody else has been around. I've seen a lot of superintendents go. I've seen every one of your seats changed, some of them multiple times. And I've seen a lot of faces in administration. And I'm appreciative of all that. I've built relationships with a lot of you, and I've built relationships with a lot of folks that are not here. And it broke my heart tonight to hear about Jeff. I mean, you just build relationships with people that continue on after they leave. In fact, when Jeff left, we continued to have dialogue at times. So that's just part of this seat that, I've had the good fortune of sitting in for 28 plus years. And I appreciate it, but one of the things I've always tried to do is give back, and to make sure my offices give them back. We've given, and not been vocal about it. Most years I bring my $3,000 check for the project graduation at the end of the year. I don't make a fuss about it. I just hand it to the superintendent and move on. And that's what you should do. I mean, you should give back. That's just part of what you should do. And, I just saw your vote. But I can tell you, Richard is one of those folks in education law that taught people like Grady. I've sat in a lot of seminars where Richard was the presenter. You won't get anybody with more knowledge in education law than Richard Schwartz across this state. And so,
again, I respect you. It's your decision, but I'd implore you to kind of move forward with your decision because, again, I intended tonight to be my last night.
Mr. Craig.
I'm gonna say this, I know we voted, folks, but I'm gonna tell you, I've never really met Mr. Schwartz, but what I've seen over the years where his hands has touched it, and Mr. Grady knows this better than I do, you're not gonna find anybody any more astute in educational law than you are this person, in my opinion, and that's only my opinion. And like I said, I know we voted, but I felt like, as Mr. Terry said, I needed to at least make that comment also.
Dr. Main.
Okay. I want to correct something Mr. Grady said. I'm sort of older than Mr. Grady. But anyway, I want to go back and tell you that I too have sat in Mr. Schwartz's training, and I too have worked with Mr. Schwartz on some cases way back that we had to refer to the state. And he is one of the most knowledgeable persons in educational law in the state of North Carolina. You have to know his reputation. I don't know anybody that has a better reputation than this gentleman as far as educational law. I don't know. And my second part that I want to say, I don't, and I'm not belittling anybody, but I really don't know what you want. You voted down the whatever, but what do you want? I mean, obviously Mr. Grady's telling you folks, I'm out of here. What do you want? And I still, when you voted it down, I don't know, what's your option? What do you want? I mean, he says, see, I'm puzzled now. I'm puzzled because you're not going to get a better quality. If you're looking for quality, and Mr. Grady gave his services dirt cheap, we're not going to get anybody cheaper now. So what do you want?
Mr. Lawson. I'm sorry.
Well, I would just like to say that all three of them was here. And my thing was that Mr. Schwartz was, I think he was on his A game. But on the flip side of it, we as a board have not discussed anything. And I thought we would have that tonight before you made your recommendation. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. And that's not what occurred. And it, to me, Mr. Schwartz, he came in late. The other ones went ahead of him to let him come in late. So now, my thing is, you know, it's not the big problem of supporting him. I really want to know what his money would be. Because, and I say this, as a school board member, we need to be good stewards of our money. You know, we are building a new technology high school up there, okay? So, I mean, I get it, I understand it, but we need to be good stewards of the money. And everybody can't ride in a Cadillac. Sometimes you have to take a step back and get in the next one, or a Kia, or a Nissan, or whatever. So that's what I'm feeling. I can understand that he's the best that there is out there, but I asked this, Mr. Grady, at his age, how long is he gonna be doing it? You're saying a one-year contract? That's the first time I had heard of one-year contract, is what was just brought tonight. I would, like I said in the beginning, I'd rather see something on paper and written down that this is what you're gonna do, and if you say you're gonna be here, you're gonna be like Mr. Grady, and you're gonna be here 10 minutes before the meeting, or 15, or 30, whatever you need to do. But my thing is that this is the first time in 28 years, or how many years, Mr. Grady? 28. That we've had to hire an attorney. And we were told about it last month, and this month we voting on it. So
again, Mr. Chair, if I may, we scheduled those attorneys, so, and then I think the second group finished early. Patty helped me. He was in the building. He was in the building. So he was not late. He was in the building. Again, I know we said last month, possibility of meeting, but, you know, we had conversations with every board member, and I thought that would suffice. That's on me if that did not. But we had conversation with board members about this, hoping that we could move it forward. I'm mindful, Ms. Grady and I've talked a lot of his intent and his desire. So any part that's not right, that's on me. But we scheduled that, and I know he was in the building at that time.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes, I would just like to reiterate that because I also met Mr. Schwartz at the door, and we made him wait while we completed the conversation that we were having in the board meeting. He actually waited about 20 minutes in the hallway. So Miss Patty and I did meet him in the hall. He was on time, but we made him wait after he had driven, I'm assuming, from Raleigh and had to drive back to Raleigh after the meeting. I just wanted to make sure I said that because I greeted him at the door. Miss Patty and I had him in the hallway the entire time. He was not late.
Mr. Henry?
Mr. Chair, I think we need to understand that the motion was to give the superintendent the authority to seek out information and bring it back. It's not that we're making the final decision at the next meeting, but we've got to start somewhere. Like Mr. Grady said, we got to start, and that's the reason why I second the motion, and let's get started.
Mr. Terry?
I'm okay with let's go ahead and get you know, the information, collect that information that Mr. Craig was asking for. And I don't know where we were told. The word I heard was late. So if I'm wrong on that, I apologize. But that was based on my understanding. But anyway, I would also like to hear that same information that we're requesting from Mr. Schwartz. I'd like to get that same information from the second group that we interviewed. I know, you know, I said earlier I'd like to see a max or a cap. I know that's probably impossible with somebody that's working part-time because it's going to have to be open-ended. But just like Mr. Randy said, we're opening a high school, and we're not going to, based on my understanding, we're not going to get any additional funds for that high school unless we get more students. So the funding is going to have to come from local. You just heard Ms. Erica say we spend year over year 90% of that funding, and even if we have a surplus of X amount, you can't count on that every year. I would love to have something in writing saying we're not going to go over this amount, and the only way to have that is a full-time person, and that's fine. But even still, if we got into litigation, it would probably exceed that amount. But I would also like to hear that same information from the second group as well. The same thing that we are requesting from Mr. Schwartz.
Mr. Craig? I got you,
Mr. Simmons, let me just make sure, and what Mr. Terry said it then. My motion did not recommend to hire this group. My motion was to get that information so we could look at those cost figures. And then we would make a decision if it was next month to hire. So I just want to make sure that was clear with everyone what my motion was, since it was brought up, you know, what will they charge for this, what will they charge for that? So that was the motion I made, so we would have an understanding of what they would be charging.
Mr. Leach?
Again, my question is, what information are we getting from these people? Who going to ask the question? What information? Are we going to pile information from some of the board members that sit in here, or is somebody going to be designated to get information? Because it look like everybody got questions that we want to ask. So how are we going to get them the information, or what questions do we want to ask, or what questions we need to get answered?
It is my intent to ask some of you to serve on that negotiation. If we get authority tonight to move forward with that. Also, I would ask you to keep in mind last month, Erica did share with you those financial statements in terms of fees and costs and we can resend that document if we need to.
Sarah?
Yes, sir. I shared with everyone the breakdown based on the hours that Mr. Grady has submitted in his previous 4 months, what that would look like in each of the attorneys if those same hours were billable hours, along with the different options we were recommending for retainer fees. And I can reshare that information.
Anyone else? Ms. Ocean?
Okay, so just for my clarity and what I'm understanding, the consensus for the board is that do we not have enough information regarding enough togetherness? We as a board have not come together and gotten enough information. I think that's what the issue is. Dr. Williamson, they are wanting to have a collaboration prior to choosing an entity. I think there's a lot of questions that they have. And I feel like if we have that there's not enough board input is what I'm getting. So, and if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me, but I think that's where the discord is coming from, that they don't feel that there's enough board interaction or they don't have enough information to move forward.
And again, we did as board members, and most of you did meet with cabinet where we did share that information and questions, but whatever the pleasure of the board.
Any other questions? And again. Hit your mic.
Here's my whole thing with it, and I've been sitting here patiently, but I think there's a lack of transparency here that's taking place of it I'm telling you right now, I've spoke to one person, Dr. Williamson, all due respect, I never spoke to you about it. You don't know my opinion. I don't even know what the references said on any of them. And before I do any job interviews in business, I'm gonna look at references. That's just my opinion.
Yep. Again, we've gathered that, and I did make reference to, we spoke with cabinet members, is what I said, Ms. Brett, so I know you spoke with the cabinet member.
Mr. Craig?
Okay, Mr. Grady, you had to tell me if this is out of order. Can I make another motion dealing with bringing them in as far as getting information?
I mean, there's a motion that's been made and
Voted down.
voted down.
Mhm.
The proper procedure, if you want to, is do a motion for reconsideration. And someone that didn't vote for that would have to bring that at the same meeting.
Mr. Sherry?
I would like to make such a motion and include the second firm in that data collection as well.
Got a first by Mr. Terry and second by Mr. Henry. All in favor? Say aye. The motion, all in favor of making that motion that Mr. Terry just made. All in favor, saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, call for account. Of the motion that Mr. Terry made, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Raise your hand. Motion passed. Get the information, Dr. Williamson, and bring it back to the board. Have some of the board members, the chairperson of each committee, in on it.
Yes. Okay. And we'll have the reference, we have that information, we include that when we have that information, but we have it. Great, thank you.
Next item is the district school improvement plan by Dr. Carr. I'm sorry. Dr. Manuel?
ask some questions. Dr. Carr, have you followed all the legislation, the rules and everything that we're supposed to do for these plans?
I have.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve these plans.
Got you got a question, or Mr. Terry? Get your, Mr. Terry?
Hey, Dr. Carr, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Do you mind outlining how or what data that was used to inform this district plan? Was any data used from Title VI or our SACE information? Was the data included in the Stacy report considered in authoring the district improvement plan?
We did not have those data sources at the time. We used all the EOG, EOC, achievement data, cell data, family engagement data, teacher working conditions, classworks, and we also had stakeholder input because we have parents on our team. So all of those different people, and we have our members are a cross-section of a lot of different members. So we have 5 or 6 parents that are now on our team. We have district office team members. We have principals. We have teachers. We have NCAE. So we have different organizations. We have Dr. Connie and the tribe on the team. So all of the different members are part of the team to help support and develop this plan.
Dr. Manuel? I'm sorry. There you go.
There are several pieces of legislation that restrict or limit or lay out what we have to do. And that's what she just said has to do with that the parents, she's required to have a parent on it. And what you just asked, that data, you're required to lay the data out, then develop it and da-da-da-da-da. You're required to have members on the team and all that. They have to, you're required to be approved. The board's required to approve it. So I think, in just looking at it, she's followed all the guidelines for the district and the state and the law book. So that's just my recommendation, that we approve these plans.
Mr. Chair, if I might, please. Dr. Carr, if you would share the employment of the principal, low-performing schools, we have 20. If you share those 4 options, which is part of our improvement plan, please.
Yes, so part of the designation with the low-performing district and low-performing schools says that the superintendent shall proceed under this law within 30 days of initial identification. The superintendent shall take one of the following actions. 1, they can recommend to the local board that the principal be retained in a current position. 2, recommend to the local board the principal be retained in current position and a plan of remediation be developed. 3, recommend to the local board the principal be transferred or proceed under this law to dismiss or demote the principal.
And so my recommendation, as is spelled out in this plan, is option 2. We are recommending to the board that all those principals be retained in the same position at those buildings, and that they are part of Levy's leadership. So we already have in place an improvement plan for those principals.
Question for Dr. Williamson. So if we go with option 2 and everyone remains in their current positions, what happens if the current plan of remediation isn't progressive, doesn't work?
Great question. The law will dictate to us then that we have to remove those principals. But we're working with principals. That's part of why we have them in the buildings training as instructional leaders, that they will show us some growth. In fact, we had that conversation with principals today. But the law says we will have to remove those principals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question? Hit your mic.
Sir?
Hold on a minute. Hit your mic. Hit your mic.
I'm sorry. On your motion, is that including, can she include what you're doing, or is it two separate motions?
No,
Or
it's
is all one?
all one.
I second her motion.
Have a motion by, Dr. Manuel, second by Mr. Lawson. All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. Next item is, Child and Adult Care Food Program, Ms. Jennifer Hannah.
Good evening, Dr. Williamson, Chairman Simmons, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. Every year, I must meet with you to discuss our guidelines for services and approval of the Shining Stars Food Program budget. Formerly known as CACFP, which is the Child and Adult Care Food Program, our food program is funded through the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and is now known as the Division of Child and Family Wellbeing Community Nutrition Services. Different name, same program. Our program requires us to work with the reimbursement of claims and payments, monitor cafeteria staff at least 3 times a year, check attendance, verify income eligibility, and observe the direct meal patterns and services to each child. Each student who meets requirements and receives free lunch will be reimbursed $2.21 for breakfast and $4.03 for lunch. According to our budget, we are expected to receive $162,750.47 for the 22-23 school year. I ask that you approve that budget again. They have increased the cost of expenses for food this year, which will help us tremendously.
Ms. Ocean.
I make a motion to approve.
Dr. Manuel.
Okay, I'm agreeing now. Miss Hannah, how are you?
Fine, thank you, ma'am.
How are you physically? I mean, is the budget, are you carrying any over from the last school year?
Last year, we incurred a loss of $47,000. That was because of the increase of food cost, along with the decrease of supply. We had to outsource to Food Lion because the companies were not able to bring the food in as normal due to COVID. So for that reason, they have upped the cost for each student in order to meet that need. Right now, with the total budget, we are looking at an expected loss of around $8,000, which is expected, and we picked that up through local funds.
Through your, follow-up question, through your local funds or
Yes.
Erica's local funds?
My local funds.
Okay.
Well, not mine, this is the Shining Stars local funds. That comes from the partnership, and they expect that cost.
All right. Thank you, Miss Hannah. You want to?
Sir.
I was just going to reiterate, yes, Shining Stars has its own fund balance, so they would have funds available to cover those losses.
Anyone else? We had a motion by Ms. Ocean, second by Mr. Leach. All in favor, saying aye. All opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sole source vendor, Ms. Erica.
Good evening, Chairman Simmons, Superintendent Dr. Williamson, and board members. I have included in your packet requests for using low wealth funds for Explore Learning and its Gizmo Science licenses, Newsella, which is an ELA Social Studies and Science subscription, and Learn Ed, which would cover 4th through 8th grade science books. And I have included that information in your packet with the details. The first 2 with the licenses would be a 1-year period.
Dr. Main.
Mr. Chair, we're very familiar with this program, and I make a motion that we approve this.
Who's the second? Who's the second? Mr. Leach. Have a motion made by Dr. Manuel, second by Mr. Leach. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passed. The 21-22 year-end budget amendments, Ms. Erica.
Thank you, sir. Again, I have those included as well. For the first 60 days in our new year, we have to record payables and receivables for our local and capital outlay funds, and this required us to do additional budget amendments that we will use to make sure we don't have any over budgeted items for our 21-22 audit. And our budget resolution allows the district to present these amendments through November. So I can answer any questions.
You got a motion by Mr. Lawson, second by Mr. Gentry. All in favor by saying aye. All opposed? Motion passed. Next is the monthly financial report by Ms. Erica.
I can answer any questions anybody has about the monthly financial report.
Motion made by Mr. Randy, second by Mr. Henry. All in favor, saying aye. All opposed? 2022, 2023 fundraiser by Ms. Erica.
And those were included in your packet as well. I can answer any questions anybody has.
Motion made by Mr. Leach, second by Mr. Gentry. All in favor, saying aye. All opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Erica. Mr. Lawson.
I move that the Board of Education for the Public Schools of Robeson County go into closed session for the purpose of discussing certified and classified personnel, North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1 and 6, and to consult with the attorney retained by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the Board of Education for the Public Schools of Robeson County. North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1 and 3. Can I have a second?
Motion made by Mr. Lawson, go into closed session, second by Mr. Craig. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? We are in closed session. Need a, I'm sorry. Huh? I thought we did. Okay, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we come out of closed session.
Motion by Ms. Ocean to come out of closed session, second by Mr. Rainey. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All approve, disapprove. We are out of closed session. Go ahead.
Motion to approve personnel as amended.
Got a motion by Mr. Lawson, second by Mr. Henry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. Closed session.
Motion to approve closed session minute.
Got a motion to approve closed session minutes by Mr. Lawson, second by Mr. Gentry. All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed.
Is there anything you need?
Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn. Oh.
May I make an announcement?
That you might.
Sorry about that. There is going to be a curriculum meeting on October the 24th at 5:30 p.m. right here in the boardroom. So please, please attend. Those of you on the curriculum meeting will be getting a personal email, text, phone call. We might even go to your house to pick you up. Right, Robert? What? I may re-announce that October 24th at 5:30 p.m. if you're on the curriculum committee, and it will be in the board meeting room, and refreshments will be served by Mr. Roberts taking care of that.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Got a motion by Mr. Rainey to adjourn, second by Mr. Leach. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?